Welcome to the Money Huddle, a podcast that explores financial topics for families and small business owners. Hosted by Michael Baker and Ross Marinell. All opinions expressed by Michael and Ross or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and may not reflect the opinions of Planners Alliance. The podcast recording is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Planners Alliance may maintain positions in securities discussed on the program.
Welcome back to the Money Huddle, and this week is Fraud Week, as we were talking about. How you doing, Ross?
Hey, I'm doing better than Felicity Huffman and Lori Laughlin this week.
How dare you talk about Aunt Becky like that?
What an unbelievable story.
So, of course, there was no way we were going to let this slide. Probably, I would say, the biggest or one of the biggest news stories last week. And I'm not even sure. I think that the story was broke by TMZ. I'm not sure who it was. But basically, if you haven't heard, huge scandal breaking because I think 50 different people, including some famous celebrities, were charged in a bribery scandal to get, basically the crux of it was these parents were paying money to a gentleman named William Rick Singer, who orchestrated this scheme to basically allow parents to bribe their way to get their kids into college.
Yeah, there were two different ways they were approaching it. One was cheating the college entrance exam, so the SAT and ACT,
right,
and having a proctor that was going back and either helping the students with the exam or changing their answers after the fact. And then the other strategy they took was through the athletic department to propose these students were athletes, they were athletic recruits, and that was how they could get admission into some of these prestigious schools. And so this is a pretty elaborate plan, and I have been reading through the justice.gov file. This is the FBI agent's report, and it is unbelievable reading through some of these stories.
What kind of juice they got in there?
Well, the first case I reviewed was the Felicity Huffman case.
Right. And if you don't know who Felicity Huffman is, she's a pretty famous actress. She's very well known for, I believe, a role. Wasn't she in Fargo? I think she might have won an Academy Award for Fargo. I believe that's her. But I do know that she was in Desperate Housewives.
Right.
So back in the day when Desperate Housewives was the top show in TV, Felicity Huffman was on that show. And she's married to William H. Macy,
Correct,
who's a pretty famous actor as well. So she's no small fish.
Power couple. So
exactly.
They selected for their daughter the college entrance exam cheating scandal. So this is alleged what happened. And so basically they were able to get their daughter to an off-site testing facility where someone could be flown in to proctor the exam. And what's interesting is from the original PSAT that their student took to the phony SAT, it jumped about 400 points is what the report said. Oh my
goodness.
So that's going from around 1,020 to 1,420 on the SAT.
So basically she went from like
average to below average to literally the top 94%. It's a dramatic jump in scores and obviously would have a real impact on your ability to get in to a prestigious school that's going to look at things like standardized testing and GPA and your extracurricular and make a determination as to who they should admit into their university. And so this one really kind of burned me because you have certain standardized tests that no matter what your income level is, whether you're low income, middle income, upper income, if you're good at math, it's going to shine through on these exams. This is one of the ways that it's hard to beat, right? You have to do well on these exams.
You got to deliver.
You have to deliver. It's one way that lower income and middle income families, their students can really compete for entrance into these schools, and not just entrance into schools, but also the impact of merit awards on their ability to go to college and have it affordable. And so I thought that was a really low blow for these families. They allegedly are paying somebody to boost their children's standardized test scores.
Well, it kind of lifted up the veneer that we all, obviously in this day and age when, the buzzword for everyone is privilege. I think this was kind of salt in a wound for a lot of people because, it's somewhat unspoken that, if you come from an affluent family or your parents have done really well or they're famous, that there's going to just be some privilege kind of imputed with that. You're going to have that. But then it's like, oh, so it's not enough that they're wealthy and famous. It's that they're getting into the best schools when they really don't even deserve to go. I mean, I remember, and the unfortunate part of it is, I think these kids, they're going to be this is going to be a stain on them for a long time. But, Lori Loughlin's daughter, you might know her from Aunt Becky from Full House. I mean, she had a full-on Instagram post, I think, where she's basically telling her little tribe that, hey, I don't really care about school, and I can't wait to go to football games. I want that experience. I want parties. I want that experience, but probably not going to go to class. And here we go. Here's mom and dad over here literally breaking the law to try to get her into like the top schools. And I'm like, that's just not going to play well.
So with their daughters, they chose or they selected to designate their daughters as recruits to the USC, so Southern California crew team. So even though
this is so
they
hilarious.
aren't members of the crew team or
never rowed a boat in their life,
they presented profiles to the athletic admissions department and were approved admission based on the athletic recruiting moniker, even though, quote, they were on the low end of the admission standards.
Yeah.
For the school.
Basically, from the story that I read, and literally, I want to say probably for 2 days after this story broke, every major news outlet was covering it. I mean, it was a big deal. But the story that I read, the guy created like this fake nonprofit that would funnel money to like coaches, and if like the kid was going to be designated an athletic recruit, like they would create like this fake athletic profile and do all that jazz that they had to do to kind of sell the story, to the admissions people, which clearly wasn't that hard to do. I mean, you got an athletic. I was a college athlete. I'm like, I always thought like, oh man, you got to deliver the goods. They got to know. I mean, apparently it's just somebody somewhere just puts on a piece of paper that you're an athletic recruit, and hey, they're making a decision on you.
It would be curious to see what the protocol was to follow through. What was the follow through from the athletic department or the school to see that these
there was none
athletic recruiting, designated students were attending the athletic meetings? Were they actually participating? Obviously there's an oversight gap with these universities, but.
Well, and we were talking about like in my thing and thinking about it, a lot of athletic recruits, right? The recruiting process starts depending on the sport. It could start when you're a freshman in high school, possibly, that soon. I mean, I remember one of the big athletes that came up with me was a friend of mine in high school. I mean, mega football star, went on and played in the NFL. And I remember seeing him like as a freshman and a sophomore, he was getting letters from Nebraska, Penn State, Florida State, Miami, the biggest college football programs in the nation. He was already getting letters, so the recruiting process could start really early. So what I think probably happened is they said, hey, we're going to designate your child as an athletic recruit. And so one of the things that they were doing is making the recruit look as good as possible on paper, telling the admissions people like, hey, we need to kind of get them pre-approved to basically hold their spot, because we don't know if they're going to come here and play the sport here, but for us to be effectively recruiting them, they got to know in advance that they got a place at like a school like USC, which is one of the schools here. So right. University of Southern California, hey, they got to know that there's a spot at USC for them. So I think they're kind of like greasing the wheels saying, hey, and then of course it's like, well, when the girl doesn't show up for crew practice or show up, and she's not on the team, the admission part had already happened, which is what they were going for, is to get him into
right.
school.
So this was just getting the students admitted as athletic recruits. It wasn't involving any merit or athletic scholarships. It's just getting them literally just getting them into the school. So this is my favorite one, though. So one of the alleged incidents involved a father working with Rick Singer to get his son designated as a potential football kicker.
Oh my gosh.
And they were literally discussing through the recorded conversations how to Photoshop this child's face onto a body for kicking. It's just unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
Reading this it's really unbelievable.
So I mean, from everything from like what you talked about, where you had the charity that would funnel money over to this testing center, where if they go in and they would take the test, they would get extra time, or they would puff up the score, or you're making a phony athletic recruit page. It's bad.
So here's what I'm thinking for our South Carolina listeners. We focus a lot of our college planning on some of the South Carolina rules, even though we cover multiple states. But
right.
The reality is the areas where these parents have focused the fraud on are really important areas for students to be focusing on to succeed at and excel at in legitimate manner.
Okay.
Meaning, it's important to know where the scholarship opportunities are. What SAT scores do you need? What ACT scores do you need to qualify for in South Carolina the Life Scholarship,
right.
the Palmetto Fellows? It is important to get these things done correctly. Obviously, we expect and believe people will do that honestly, but taking advantage of tutors and test preparation for the SAT or ACT.
Sure.
Understanding the differences between the exams and having a game plan to go and attack those intelligently. It really is. It's like you have to be prepared to go take those exams.
Yeah.
And I think pursuing that type of activity a year or two in advance could be the difference between getting a scholarship and some merit awards or not.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that a lot of parents, we were in a college presentation one time, and the speaker, he made the comment that kind of resonated with me. He said, if you're waiting till, you're a freshman or sophomore year, you're already behind, and his point in, planning for that was, you need to be researching schools, as early as 8th grade, to learn what schools have great programs for what vocations, doing some of the pre-assessment with, to find out what your kids' interests are, where their strengths are, that type of stuff, and not waiting till junior and senior year to try to get this all figured out, because, a lot of kids that, have a pretty clear-cut idea, like, hey, I'm really interested in this field, but, some kids, we get up in our feelings and we're like, you know what? Mom and dad went to Clemson. My granddaddy went to Clemson, and I'm going to go to Clemson, and they're caught up in that. But then the field that they want to study, that they primarily are wanting to do, maybe Clemson's not the best school for that. And we try to help people understand, we need to be trying to make the best decisions about how to pick a school versus just going with our feelings, going with our gut, because that's when people make, you make the commitment, then you got to deliver the checkbook, and it's not always the best investment.
One of the things I thought was interesting too, after the social media blowback on this story breaking and some of the commentary was,
it was fire on social media.
There was a nice little thread about some successful entrepreneurs and just career-wise, that started off at a community college, because there's this idea that, well, we've got to go to these fantastic prestigious
schools. Got to go to the best.
And the reality was there was a lot of people that kind of raised their hand and said, hey, listen, you know what? Here's where I am today, but this is where I started my education in college. I started at a community college for 2 years, transitioned to a 4-year program for junior and senior year, and here's where I am today.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a lot more people telling their story if that reflects them. And I also think, I know Mike Rowe is a huge proponent of blue collar jobs, and there's nothing wrong with going in and learning a trade, because those tradespeople can make some great money. And I guess the bottom line of the story is some of these parents were going to great lengths, bribery, fraud, committing crimes, felonies to get their kids into school. And we're not even sure if their kids really wanted to go to these schools or how badly they wanted to go to school. And it's like, we think that a very thoughtful approach should be, it should equally include like, hey, does your child actually want to go to college? Because there's plenty of evidence out there to say that, hey, a college education is great, but a college education is not essential now to being successful. You got kids that are developing apps, that are going and learning trades. There are kids that are going out and starting their own business and having a shot at that. I think it's time to really revamp our view of the traditional college model.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what type of heat the colleges themselves are going to face from this type of scandal.
They're going to have some mad alumni, that's for sure.
It's going to be interesting to see where the pressure lies. Obviously, the orchestrators of this scandal are going to probably feel the brunt of the legal action, but we'll see. It's going to be interesting. But I agree. I think folks need to keep their options open when it comes to what their child's path may be, and knowing that if it is a trade school or a 2-year technical college to start their experience, look, that's not the end of the world. And maybe that is the most sensible path for some folks that aren't positive about what they want to do, that they want to go to a 4-year school right out of the gate. It's an alternative that I think we need to start talking about more, that needs to be accepted, because the links people will go to get their children into some of these more prestigious schools is obviously alarming.
Hey, I would much rather have one of my own children, sit out a year, work a part-time job, take some community college classes, and then say, you know what, I think I know what I want to do and I'm ready to go for it, than me to burn $40,000 to send them, or plus, get loans and everything to send them to, a 4-year school where they just, they've just kind of flounder because they're not clear on that.
That was some of the funny feedback online was, that's an expensive way to find yourself.
Oh,
and discover what you want to do at, 30 or 40 grand a clip for a school year. So really, from my perspective, to sum it up, I encourage all the parents and their students to know the thresholds to obtain certain scholarships in the state. There are definite milestones that I think you would want to set for yourself as a student to say, okay, I'm ready to go to a 4-year college. For example, the Life Scholarship has an SAT requirement of 1,100. That's probably a pretty good benchmark. If you're over that and you can get that scholarship, maybe you're ready. If not, maybe we should, maybe some of the other options are more appealing.
I got you. So since this is Fraud Week,
that's right.
You got some more stuff for us.
Yeah. So just continuing the discussion. So I found an article.
Wait! Before you do that, we have to 100% give kudos to the FBI team, because they actually labeled that investigation, that college fraud bribery scandal. What was it?
Operation Varsity Blues.
Varsity Blues.
They got a sense of humor at the FBI. That was really, I read that. I was like, oh, that's perfect.
That is perfect. Anyway, we have to give shout out to whoever named that. Hope they bought you, got you a gift card to your favorite coffee shop, because that was legit.
So I found an article on, this was CBS News. Social Security may use Facebook and Instagram posts to nix disability claims.
Oh, boy.
So it appears that Social Security Administration is going to start peering into folks' Facebook and Instagram feeds to see if the disability they claim they have is bearing out in life, meaning you say you have a neck or a back injury.
Right.
Are there photos of you golfing?
And there you're out on the golf course.
Or skiing.
Throwing your golf club.
So I thought that was a nice addition to the fraud week that we're experiencing here, is that Social Security Administration, and kudos to them, because I think that's an obvious channel that they could use to at least identify some people that are taking advantage of the system.
It is, and by no means should anyone interpret, our lighthearted banter on this to be making fun of people that have legitimate disabilities. And yes, we are very, very aware that not all disabilities are visible. There's an uncommon thing that, when you hear someone's disabled, that we're supposed to be able to look at them and know what's wrong. We know that. All that being said, it's like it's high time that they start using some methodology, some modern methodology to track down some of this, because the disability, a lot of people don't realize this, but the Social Security program that we pay money into, the FICA tax that goes to Social Security and Medicare, where a part of that goes for Social Security disability, right. And the disability fund is in deep trouble.
It's dire.
It's
situation.
In deep trouble, and there's a lot of folks that commit fraud with disability. I mean, it's common in the insurance industry. We see the attempts to happen, but I can't imagine that Social Security program. Once you kind of get approved, how they police that, and so I think this is an innovative way. Some people say, "Oh, it's Big Brother," and I'm like, "Well, look, if you're committing a crime, which is fraud." I'm torn on, like, should they be using it or not? I'm like, yeah, because we're taxpayers paying for this.
We'll see how it's executed on their part to see. But if there are blatant abusers of the system, that can be
let's make it a democratic process. When they find a video of Jim Bob out on the golf course, like swinging his golf club. Like I said, Jim Bob was approved for disability for back pain. Says what's that? Disability there. It debilitates him from working. There's the word I was looking for. Debilitating. Right. Does he look debilitated to you? Like, let's take a vote. You know how they have all those polls on Facebook and Twitter?
Facebook poll.
Let the people decide. We'll have like the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Come on, man. I mean, like, that'd be like the hottest new app out there. Like, oh, I'm going to log in and I'm going to see who's got disability, who's on trial today. Oh, man. So, anyway, I thought that actually is a pretty neat story with what they're trying to do. And I do think that, as many people use all these different social media platforms, I mean, you've seen it. I mean, you've seen people lose their job because of a tweet that they put or something they put on Facebook. And there's freedom of speech things there, that you could get into. But I think one of the things that probably is a theme is that we should all be very aware of what we're putting out online into the universe for who knows who to see, because you don't know who sees it. You don't know who's watching.
It's true. Right? I mean, if you're posting photos on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the reach is far, and a lot of folks can peer into your life and learn a lot about you from the content that we're willingly putting out into the stratosphere.
And some people put everything. They put their life out there. It's crazy. All right. So, again, it's Fraud Week. So we got another story that broke very recently. The SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, charges a Texas radio host for a $19.6 million Ponzi scheme.
Ooh.
And I got to tell you, this one, when I read most of these, I'm always bent, because I'm just like, dadgummit, how do people fall for this? And I realize that people trust, and there are some of these people are con men for a reason. They're good at it, but it's always a little extra when someone's preaching taking the religious token. So this guy, he was called the Money Doctor, and his firm claimed to be a vehicle of God's peace and comfort to as many people as possible, helping first with their financial peace of mind. Wow. Oh my gosh. If this guy didn't sound like a fraud, I don't know, but his name was William Neal, calling him Doc Gallagher, and he's self-dubbed the Money Doctor, and he had a radio show that aired on 3 Dallas stations, and he would use evangelical, Christian language to entice people to giving him money. He was arrested on March 8th for securities fraud, and basically this is the standard old. I mean, this is the Madoff 2.0, where basically he offered these funds or these investing strategies, guaranteed them. Get this, he guaranteed risk-free returns in the accounts ranging from 5% to 8% per year.
Right. Return promises are the number one red flag with any type of discussion over risk and reward. So if you hear those types of claims, or you feel like you're being presented something that sounds too good to be true, dig in, investigate, verify.
Yeah. First of all, if you're investing in something that's a security or that's got market risk to it, the word guarantee should never be around that ever.
Right.
Because that just doesn't happen. You're not allowed to use that word. If you're investing in a market sensitive instrument, that word doesn't ever have a place at the table.
Right. I think it's important to remember too, even if something historically looked like it performed in that range, the old moniker, right? Past performance does not indicate future results. And so just because something did positive or well in the last 10 years doesn't mean the next 10 years is going to be the same. And so that discussion should always be, I think, started with that framework, that something that's historical or past performance cannot be predicted going forward.
No, yeah. And I mean, and so for those that might be listening that they remember the name Bernie Madoff, but are a little fuzzy on the details. The thing about Madoff was he never promised people outrageous returns. I mean, at the time that he was going strong, right, he was, I think he was promising 11, 12%, which, I mean, most people we would love to have 11, 12%. But, some of these people have promised, the moon and the stars. So here he is, he's likely talking to a conservative base of people, and he's just promising 5 to 8%, which, that just beats the brakes off of like safe money right now. If you want to go to the bank and get a CD, or you want to buy a fixed guaranteed annuity or something with this got a fixed rate, nothing's giving you a guaranteed 5,
right,
or guaranteed 8. And so anyway, I think people they got caught up in his language. He schmoozed them pretty well. The guy's on the radio, so unfortunately, a lot of the older generations, sadly, if it's on the radio, it's kind of like the internet now. It's like their internet. It's like if it's on the radio, he must be legit, must be an expert. Which leads me to the next story. Again, fraud week. So another guy, this story broke recently as well, and it's just like boom, left and right. So this guy's gentleman, he was called America's Money Answers Man. Wow. And the guy's name was Jordan Goodman. And I kind of skimmed through this article on New York Times by Ron Lieber. I actually have started to like Ron's writing a lot.
Yeah.
He's written a few things that I've read in the past. But his opening paragraph on this is, or opening statement is pretty awesome. He goes, spin your radio dial, download a podcast, or sit down at your next corporate gathering, and you'll have no trouble finding a self-styled financial guru to tell you what to do with your money. And I'm like, isn't that true? It just seems like, financial people are falling out of the sky nowadays. Right. And, and I understand. And, again, for, our listeners and the people that we work with, we don't take it lightly because, there are a ton of people. One of the biggest fights in our industry right now is the fact that who is held to a fiduciary standard, required to put a client's interest above their own, who is not held to that standard, who can call themselves an advisor, who shouldn't be calling themselves advisors that can. And it's a very confusing space for a lot of people to know who's who.
Right.
So this guy, really quick, he had all the trappings, right? He had a radio show. I think he'd written several books. And the worst part about it, he was endorsed by Money Magazine. Like he was like one of their people. And here he was, for 18 years, a veteran of Money Magazine, author of books with his face on the cover, sweet talking guy. But he's basically, the way his system worked was he would contract with financial companies to basically be called what's an affiliate, but he would funnel people like consumers over to them, and he was getting like paid on the back end. Like people didn't know like that these companies were paying him. It was kind of like one of those, hey, I really like this company over here, but he was never telling them like, well, they pay me if you go and do business with them. Oh. And it was that's just like part of it. And he obviously is lawyered up, and we're going to see how it plays out. But again, it's like this here is a voice that had been in our business for decades. In fact, Ron even said, I interviewed him, like promoted one of his books, and lo and behold, he's doing all this shady dealings behind the scenes and finally gets busted.
So it's hard to detect some of those situations or what turns someone to take that route. It's sort of like going back to these actresses that are pushing their kids through school. You don't know where that trigger started, and it's really hard to decipher who is being straightforward and honest and maybe who's not. And so it kind of falls back to get to know those folks very well. You should spend time with people before you make a decision on using them. So make sure that you get a comfort level with the individual that's going to be responsible for developing your retirement plan.
Yeah.
And if that's 2-3 meetings, then it's 2 or 3 meetings. And you shouldn't move until you're comfortable that you've done your homework, have a sense of who they are, understand the relationship that they have with you,
mm-hmm.
and review some of the disclosures, because
Sure.
it's important to know who has what standard of care, who has a fiduciary standard of care, and who doesn't, and a sense of who's making the decisions for your planning. And so, man, that's tough. It's tough to hear that those two situations happen. I'm sure people probably have either paid more fees or lost money in some cases. And so it is nerve-wracking for folks to make those transitions. And
well, I would say, and this is a topic that I feel sure will unfortunately come blazing back to the forefront the next time we have a significant market downturn, because that's just when, people find out who's who. But, in the one gentleman's case that was out of Dallas, what I always tell people, always, is there's a term in our industry, and it's called custody. And we want clients to know, like, who actually has your money. Right, so there's these big custodians. They should have your money. Places like E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab, Vanguard, Fidelity. There are many custodians. That's what you want to. One of the first questions, if you're thinking about making an investment or working with an advisory team, ask them, well, where's my money going to be? Who am I going to get statements from? Because the first, to me, a huge red flag should be if your money isn't going to be with a third-party custodian. It's going to be with like their firm. Like, well, we custody the money. To me, that is, even if they are completely legitimate and doing things the right way, I think there's too much moral hazard there. You bail. That's just me personally, my personal opinion. But the other thing is, in the second guy's case, is it's okay to ask financial professionals how they get paid. No one should be, in this day and age, no one should be running from that conversation,
right.
And it's like, hey, if they're advising, simple things like, hey, if you are sending someone to a CPA or sending someone to an estate planning attorney or some other, referral partner, it's perfectly okay to ask them, hey, are you compensated in any way? Because they shouldn't have a problem telling you. And I think that was one of the big things with this guy, the money answers man guy, was, he had all of these relationships with these companies. It looked like they were just, well, I just really believe in this company. And he wasn't telling people they get paid.
He's recommending this service or this program, and really in the back end, he's being compensated.
Absolutely. So, that's the thing, is it's okay to ask questions. And in fact, if you're really working with somebody that I think is trying to put your interest above their own and holding themselves to that fiduciary standard, they are going to be more than happy to sit down and explain to you how they get compensated, the ins and outs of how it works, where your money's going to be. So crazy story, lots of scandals breaking this past week. We had to talk about the college one because that was bananas. We may even have to circle back to it because as that unfolds, there could be some more bombshells that come out.
What happens next? I can't. I'm very interested to see which direction this is going to go. There's charges being filed, so we'll see how deep this runs.
Absolutely. As always, thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and shoot us an email if there's something you want us to talk about on the show. We'll be glad to talk about it. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.